Today's short discussion is about identity. We all have an identity. We have a very specific set of beliefs about ourselves. We grow up and craft this identity based on things that we see, we like, that we relate to. We also include things that we're taught from our parents and our role models and all the sorts of things that we idolize. And we create this vision. This vision or identity is how we see ourselves operating in the world. Now, this identity may or may not be true. I think a lot of people have a pretty skewed identity of who they are, and they think they represent differently in the world from actually how they're perceived and seen by others. I want to focus more on how your identity may be impacting the financial decisions that you're making. And in particular, when you're talking about financial decisions, your identity really doesn't matter. Financial decisions are based on things completely outside of our identity. There are a series of circumstances that dictate how our financial decisions lead us to a certain endpoint. And so those fundamental principles have to dictate our decisions. I am going to talk about how wrapping in your identity into how you make decisions actually leads you down paths that are not ideal from a financial perspective. Before we go on, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow. Every little bit helps. I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking about this video or any other video I've made. I really appreciate your support. It means the world to me. Now back to identity. In a number of videos, we've discussed these hidden scripts that dictate how we think about money. That's obviously very important, but we don't even need to look specifically at the scripts about money to think about how this might impact our financial decisions. It has more to do really with how you perceive yourself and the certain values and identity you're trying to project onto the world. I'm going to give you the clearest example that I can right now. There is a movement, or at least was a strong movement, called the ESG movement. This is environment, social, and governance movement, whereby there are strong expectations for companies to be in alignment with environmentalism, social practices, and governance practices that are of a more progressive, typically more progressive nature. Now, this started happening a number of years back, and society in general started to communicate to these companies that this is a really important thing. And if you embrace ESG, then we are going to promote you. We're going to shop at your store. We're going to give you our money. Now, of course, this can be a powerful tool if done appropriately, but a lot of the companies that are promoting ESG are just doing so to pay lip service to the requirements that society has dictated. And if you're following current news and the Trump administration, you know that ESG is way out of favor. People just simply think that this is a ridiculous notion. Now, it's not to challenge the idea of companies being environmentally friendly or companies having certain social standards. These are all good practices, but when you bleed those ideas into the fundamental principles of a business, there could be potentially some confusion. Businesses are ultimately about bottom line. They're about making profit. The fundamental principles, or first principles, which are basically the foundational principles, the things that are required to make a successful business, these things do not include certain requirements around environmental protection or societal norms and values that have become over the last number of years more in favor. But we're talking about fundamental principles here. And when you're evaluating an investment from a financial perspective, if you're looking at a company and choosing that company because it aligns with your ESG identity, the things that you value in your life, then you could be making some significant compromises in order to align with that ideology. Instead, the more rational thing to do is to actually just look at first principles evaluation of a company. What is the company doing? What's the bottom line? How does this company operate? The fundamentals will tell you more about that investment than anything to do with these ideas in society that are popular at the moment. In fact, that's a very unreliable metric to follow. And if you allow your identity, your values, your association with those ideas to dictate how you make business decisions, there is a misalignment there. And if you continually make those decisions based upon things that don't align or mesh together, then you will continually find yourself not necessarily getting the results that you desire. It's okay to have values and beliefs and to support those ideas and to only invest in things that you love, but you have to understand that there are consequences to making those decisions. And if that's okay with you, if you're okay with a 5% return versus the potential 15% return, then you can make that decision. My preferred route is actually to make all financial decisions based upon first principles. Again, first principles are the very core foundational ideas that are the underlying drivers behind that particular system or mechanism or business, if you will. And so if you understand what's driving a business, you can make decisions based upon that. And then incrementally, you can add additional context to your decision until it makes sense. Those filters can include values, but oftentimes, if they do, you're skewing the results and you'll get something that's not ideal at the very end. No, I'm not trying to discount these important considerations. If you do believe in some of these things, you absolutely should support causes that are important to you. It's just not always a great idea to bring those values into decisions that have very little to do with those values. And if they do, if those companies are bringing in those ideas specifically, it's usually a marketing effort or somehow a way of communicating something to you to make you feel more comfortable. It doesn't necessarily translate into anything that actually aligns with what you'd like. Instead, I advocate for making that additional return, that 10% difference that you could have if you make the better financial decision. You can use your extra earnings to invest in things that are really important to you. You can donate more to a certain cause if that's what you'd like to do with your money. But it's better to have the choice and then to direct that money in a way that you feel is most impactful versus just investing in a company that's selling you on a series of ideas that align with your personal identity or brand. Now, this lesson goes far beyond just financial issues. Oftentimes, we are unable to make very informed decisions because our identity is wrapped up in how others perceive us and how we want to be seen throughout society. And so we will naturally go towards things that align with our values and principles, but that doesn't mean that you're giving every new idea a fair analysis, a fair evaluation. I try very hard when I'm thinking through new problems and new ideas to completely eliminate all of my personal identity from the equation. I look again at those fundamental first principles and I start my analysis. Now, as I get deeper and deeper, I will overlay some of my personal bias because it's impossible to eliminate personal bias. But to the extent possible, I try to eliminate any bias that might impact or affect my ability to make a sound decision on the thing or idea that I'm looking at specifically. When it comes to money, this is particularly important because your identity and values can lead you astray, feeling good perhaps about your morals and identity, but ultimately losing in the long term. I'd love to hear from you below about how you see this topic. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Do you agree or disagree strongly with my position? And I'll look forward to sharing another video with you next week. Take care.